All right. It has not been difficult to discern that huge numbers of civilians have been killed over the last 22 months in Gaza by the U.S.-financed Israeli attack on Gaza, destruction of Gaza, genocide in Gaza, ethnic cleansing of Gaza. We're coming up on 2 full years now of just nonstop atrocity. And there are, and always have been, very extreme, vocal, and influential loyalists of the Israeli government who are American citizens who live in the United States but maintain loyalty to the Israeli government, who defend Israel no matter what it does. Doesn't matter what evidence you present. They will instantly claim the source is lying, that it's anti-Semites producing this information, that it's all sorts of conspiring against the poor Israelis, the poor set upon Israelis. The whole world is aligned against the Israelis, even the most powerful and richest country on earth. Pay for its military, pay for its wars, deploy our own service members in harm's way to defend them. Even though Israelis have better standard of living than millions of Americans, they see themselves as constantly beleaguered and persecuted by the whole world, even though Western Europe as well provides them with arms, provides them with intelligence in a way that almost no other country on the planet receives. But its loyalists believe that anytime there's studies, anytime there's data, anytime there are reports, anytime there are accusations, inherently those who are making those, who are presenting that evidence, are anti-Semitic liars, just by virtue of the fact that the information reflects negatively on Israel. One of the questions that, of course, has circulated around this, especially as scholars of genocide, including Israeli scholars of genocide, have been rapidly concluding that genocide is the only accurate word to describe what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, is exactly how many civilians have been killed in Gaza, whether there's been any care taken to ensure that, or to avoid the slaughter of innocents. And the question is, what is the ratio between the number of militants or terrorists killed and the number of civilians? Benjamin Netanyahu has been making the rounds by doing interviews with podcast hosts who he knows are extremely pro-Israel or just too ignorant to ask him any meaningful questions or push back on him, as is the case of the Nelk boys. He sat down with Trigonometry and Konstantin Kizin and Francis Foster, both of whom are fanatically pro-Israel. And one of the claims that Netanyahu made was that they have a kill rate of a civilian combatant ratio of 1-to-1. For every civilian who's killed, that means that they have killed one terrorist or one militant, which is considered not a great ratio, but an acceptable ratio in war. This is the claim that Netanyahu made, and it was released just this morning.
We do. We call up the Palestinian civilians and we say, leave the area. Millions of text messages, millions of individual phone calls. Please get out. And Hamas stands there and tries to prevent them by shooting them, killing them. So what do you think? Is that genocide? No, it isn't. You know it isn't. And yet Israel is being blamed. And of course, the ratio of combatants to non-combatants killed is about 1.5-to-1, which is probably, I think every civilian death is a tragedy. We do everything we can, as no army has done in history in such dense urban warfare, to prevent it.
No army in the world. You know, it is amazing. This is a very common claim in American discourse. The IDF is the most moral army in the world that goes out of its way more than anyone to avoid civilian death. It's kind of amazing because it is quite an insult to the American military. It's basically saying, yeah, the American military is pretty reckless. They go around killing civilians. They're not a very moral army. The Israeli army, however, they're the most moral army in the world. And you'll hear Americans saying that about this foreign army. And it's a joke. It's an absolute joke that the IDF is even close to that. You could almost make the case at this point, as we're about to show you, that they're the most immoral army, that they have the least amount of concern for civilian death because they don't actually consider the people of Gaza to be civilians. They consider them animals, subhumans, their lives having no real value. We just showed you the statements from this U.S. attorney for Nevada who leans into her Israeliness, even though she's an American citizen, no American official, who says that there's no such thing as an innocent person in Gaza. This is a common theme. We've heard this from so many people. So do you think with that level of dehumanization and contempt for the people of Gaza, that they're not innocent, they're not even human, they're animals, they're subhuman, that there's any care taken whatsoever to avoid slaughtering them? Obviously, the answer is no. Unfortunately for Netanyahu, he made this claim a day before 972 magazine, which is an Israeli magazine, obtained and then shared with The Guardian a database that came from the Israeli military that suggests that at least 83% of the people killed by the IDF in Gaza were civilians. Obviously very far from the 1-to-1 ratio or 1.5-to-1 ratio that Netanyahu baselessly claimed yesterday, that of all the people killed in Gaza, according to the Israeli army's own database, at least 83% are innocent people, are civilians. That's a hideous, horrific war crime ratio. Here's what 972 reported, quote, data from an internal Israeli intelligence database indicates that at least 83% of Palestinians killed in Israel's onslaught on Gaza were civilians, an investigation by 972 magazine, Local, and The Guardian can reveal. Figures obtained from the classified database, which record the death of militants from Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, contradict by a huge margin the public statement of Israeli army and government officials throughout the war, which have generally claimed a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio of civilian to militant casualties. Instead, the classified data backs up the findings of several studies suggesting Israel's bombardment of Gaza has killed civilians at a rate with few parallels in modern warfare. The world's most moral army killing civilians, quote, at a rate with few parallels in modern warfare. The Israeli army confirmed the existence of the database, which is managed by the Military Intelligence Directorate. Multiple intelligence sources familiar with the database said the army views it as the only authoritative tally of militant casualty figures. In the words of one of them, quote, there's no other place to check. The database includes a list of 47,653 names of Palestinians in Gaza whom this unit considers to be active in the military wings of Hamas and PIJ. According to the sources, the list is based on the group's own internal documents acquired by the army. The database designates 34,973 of those names as operatives of Hamas and 12,700 as operatives of Islamic Jihad. According to the data, which was obtained in May of this year, the Israeli army believed it has killed around 8,900 operatives since October 7th. The death of 7,330 of whom were considered certain and 1,570 recorded as probably dead. Assuming that all of the certain and probable militant deaths were counted in the death toll, that would mean over 83% of Gaza's dead were civilians. If the probable deaths are discounted and only the certain deaths included, the proportion of civilian death rises to more than 86%. And there you see the graphic provided or created by the Israeli intelligence database. This is not NGOs or outside groups. This is or any agency in Gaza. This is the Israeli intelligence own accounts. And there you see at the top, Palestinian civilians and militants killed by the Israeli army in Gaza between October 23rd and May 2025. And the red here is civilian deaths, and the black is militant death, so you can see it. So it's expressed here, an infinitesimal number of the people killed in Gaza by the IDF are militants, but overwhelming majority Obviously, nowhere near a 1-to-1 ratio claimed by Netanyahu. And here's a pie chart illustrating the same data where you can see how big the red is, which is the deaths of civilians, and the black is representative of the number of militants who are killed. That's what's been going on in Gaza, conducted by the world's most moral army. Now, here's how this compares to other conflicts. Quote, in global conflicts tracked by UCDP since 1989, civilians made up a greater portion of the dead only in the genocides in Bosnia and Rwanda and during Russia's 3-month siege of Mariupol, Pedersen said. And here you see a chart of the different comparisons. Here's Rwanda at the top with a 99.8% civilian death toll. Mariupol, which is one small part of the Russian-Ukraine war. And there in fourth place, you see Gaza at 83%. And there's a huge drop-off from Gaza to the other. Aleppo, 59% were civilians. Bosnia, 57%. Sudan, 49%. Syria, 29%. Ukraine, 10%. Afghanistan, 8%. So in Ukraine, the whole Russian war in Ukraine, 10% of those killed are civilians. 10%. And here you see in Gaza, 83%. And again, the ones listed above in Mariupol and in Ukraine and Srebrenica in Bosnia, these were limited massacres. These weren't overall wars. These were massacres, part of an overall war. In terms of a sustained war, there's really no parallel in modern war fighting. Rwanda was basically a civil war. So the percentage of 83% killed is about as bad as it gets, at least in the 21st century or even going back into the 20th century. And that has been something that has been clear for quite a while. The cruelty, the sadism, the number of civilians killed, the disregard for civilian life has been as atrocious and heinous as it gets. You have to go back to World War II to find anything comparable. We've talked to experts in genocide and famine who say you have to go back to World War II to find anything quite as brazenly criminal, war criminal, from all of this data as what's happening in the US-funded Israeli genocide in Gaza. And these numbers just prove more and more exactly what the reality is here. Going all the way back to December of 2023, when Israeli propaganda was just churning out lie after lie, here from CNN, the Israeli military says that 2 civilians are killed for every Hamas militant. And that's a tremendously positive ratio given combat challenges. So even they were claiming that the ratio is 2-to-1. But it's actually infinitely higher even than that. Here from the Times of Israel in May of this year, Netanyahu, the ratio of Hamas combatants to Gazan civilians killed in the ongoing war is about 1-to-1, which would be 50% of civilians killed. An absolute lie. And then here from the Prime Minister's office in November of last year, statement by Prime Minister Netanyahu, quote, in Gaza, we dismantled the Hamas battalions and killed close to 20,000 terrorists. We killed Sinwar. We killed Daif, we killed senior Hamas officials, and we brought back 154 hostages back. They claimed 20,000 Hamas militants killed in this statement in November of 2024, even though the far more updated data from Israeli intelligence only claims 8,900 militants killed. Less than half as of May of 2025 than what Netanyahu just fabricated in late 2024. The Israeli government just disseminates utterly unhinged and baseless lies without the slightest regard for whether there's evidence to substantiate them. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.